What if the ancients were more advanced than we are today, just in different ways? In the collective imagination of the modern world, ancient civilizations are often relegated to the realm of mystery, myth, and rudimentary survival. We see them as the dawn of human existence, still fumbling with fire, stone tools, and basic shelter. Yet, as archaeologists continue to uncover astonishing remnants of ancient life across continents, a different picture emerges, one that challenges our linear view of progress and forces us to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about technological advancement. The illusion of modern supremacy, we pride ourselves on being the most technologically advanced generation in human history. And to an extent we are. We have landed on the moon, mapped the human genome, and created digital worlds from binary code. But in our obsession with progress, we've dismissed a vital truth. Much of what we consider modern innovation is rooted in ideas conceived thousands of years ago by civilizations long gone. Take the smartphone in your pocket. It relies on a combination of communication systems, mathematical algorithms, medical knowledge, and even philosophical concepts that trace back to forgotten empires. The water flowing through your tap, the roads you travel on, the hospitals you visit all bear the imprints of innovations that originated in places like Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, in ancient China. Ancient inventions still with us. Did you know that the idea of a flushing toilet dates back to the Minoans of Crete around 2000 BCE? Or that the ancient Romans had a form of concrete that could self-heal underwater, lasting longer than many modern equivalents? From central heating in ancient Greece to surgical tools in ancient Egypt, the ancients were not only intelligent, they were incredibly resourceful. Even the Antikythera mechanism, a device discovered in a shipwreck off the coast of Greece, functioned as an analog computer capable of predicting astronomical positions. For centuries, we assumed such mechanical sophistication didn't exist until the Renaissance. Yet here was a clear counterexample hidden in the sands of time. Why were these achievements forgotten? History, it turns out, is often written not by the victors, but by the survivors. Wars, colonization, religious shifts, natural disasters, and cultural assimilation have erased much of humanity's intellectual heritage. Libraries burned, languages died, and technologies fell out of use, only to be rediscovered centuries later and mistaken for new. Our disconnection from these ancient minds is not due to their lack of brilliance, but to our loss of memory. What we've inherited is fragmented, sometimes ridiculed, and often misunderstood. But the more we uncover, the more it becomes clear that we are not so much the pinnacle of human ingenuity. We are the latest stewards of an ancient legacy. The road ahead in this series, in the upcoming chapters, we will journey into the forgotten cities of the Sumerians, examine the precise engineering of the Indus Valley, and decode the intellectual marvels of ancient Egypt and Greece. We will travel through the knowledge hubs of Mali, the scientific discoveries of the Chinese dynasties, and the masterful architecture of the Nabateans. We 1T just ask what these civilizations created. We LL explore how their creations resonate in our lives today. From the blueprints of modern cities to surgical tools that still resemble ancient designs, we will trace the invisible thread of innovation that links our digital age with the analog wisdom of the past. Prepare to have your worldview shifted. The ancients were not behind us. In many ways, they were simply traveling a different road to the same destinations. Welcome to Lost Ancient Civilizations and Their Unsung Inventions. The Sumerians, architects of the modern world before the pharaohs raised their pyramids or the Greeks philosophized about democracy and reason. A civilization nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates. Rivers laid the groundwork for human advancement in ways we are still uncovering today. The Sumerians, who flourished in Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, around 4500 BCE, are often called the world's first urban civilization, but to leave it at that is to sell them short. They were not just the first to build cities, they pioneered entire systems of thought, governance, and technology that would echo through millennia. Cuneiform, the first written language. At the heart of the Sumerian legacy is cuneiform, humanity's first written language. Initially developed to keep track of trade and inventories, cuneiform quickly evolved into a medium for recording laws, myths, poetry, and astronomy. The famous Epic of Gilgamesh, considered one of the oldest literary texts, was written in cuneiform and predates Homer by over a millennium. Why does this matter? Because writing enabled civilization itself. Laws could be standardized, knowledge preserved, contracts enforced, and science recorded. Without writing, progress would always have to start over with each generation. Mathematics and the sexagesimal system. The Sumerians gave us the base 60 sexagesimal numerical system, which still influences us today. Our 60-minute hours, 24-hour days, and 360-degree circles all trace back to Mesopotamian math. They used this system to develop a surprisingly advanced understanding of geometry and algebra, which they applied in everything from architecture to astronomy. Their calendars tracked lunar and solar cycles. They could predict eclipses, measured time with sundials and water clocks, and developed a conceptual understanding of place value. Urban planning and infrastructure. The Sumerians were the original city builders. Cities like Uruk, Ur, and Eridu were meticulously planned, with zoning for temples, markets, residential areas, and administrative centers. They engineered some of the earliest examples of civic infrastructure: roads, canals, sewage systems, and public granaries. Uruk, one of the most famous Sumerian cities, may have housed over 50,000 people, an enormous population for the time. Its ziggurat step temple stood at the city's heart, not only as a religious center, but also as a beacon of Sumerian engineering. The birth of bureaucracy. With the rise of complex cities came the need for administration. The Sumerians invented the earliest known legal code, predating Hammurabi by centuries. They had a class of scribes trained to manage records, taxes, and correspondence. This proto-bureaucracy created an early form of statehood, where governance extended beyond brute force and into legal and economic systems. Sumerian innovations still with us: accounting and banking. They used clay tokens and tablets to track trade, essentially inventing double-entry bookkeeping. Medicine. Sumerian tablets revealed prescriptions, diagnoses, and a theory of illness involving spirits and the balance of bodily elements. Education. They had formal schools for scribes with rigid curricula and even standardized exams. Tools and inventions. The plow, the potter's wheel, and early metallurgy all advanced significantly under Sumerian innovation. Rediscovering the Sumerians. For centuries, knowledge of the Sumerians was lost to history. It was until the 19th century the European archaeologists began to uncover the ruins of Ur and decode the cuneiform tablets. What they found shocked the academic world: a civilization so advanced, so structured, and so rich in culture that it demanded a rewriting of human history. Yet, despite these discoveries, the Sumerians remain in the shadow of their successors. Popular culture remembers the Egyptians and Greeks, but few know that without Sumer, there may have been no Pythagoras, no Archimedes, and no Aristotle. Conclusion. The true cradle of civilization, the Sumerians deserve more than a footnote in our textbooks. They were visionaries who shaped the very fabric of modern life: law, timekeeping, writing, mathematics, city building. Their legacy is not just buried in the sands of a rock, it's alive in every contract we sign, every clock we check, and every word we write. In our next segment, we will shift our gaze eastward to the Indus Valley Civilization, another astonishing culture that built cities of breathtaking sophistication and left behind an architectural and engineering legacy still unmatched in many ways today. Join us as we continue our journey through the lost genius of the ancient world. The Harappans, urban planning before its time, long before the skyscrapers of New York or the meticulously designed streets of Paris. There thrived a civilization that laid the foundations for urban planning in a manner so precise, so forward-thinking, that it baffles modern architects and engineers to this day. The Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization, flourished between 2600 BCE and 1900 BCE across what is now Pakistan and northwest India, with cities like Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Lothal, and Dhulavira. The Harappans built some of the most advanced settlements of the ancient world, yet their achievements remain largely unsung, civilization hidden in plain sight. For centuries, the glory of the Harappans remained buried beneath the earth, unnoticed by history. It wasn't until the 1920s when British and Indian Archaeologists uncovered the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, that the world realized an entirely independent civilization had existed contemporaneous with Mesopotamia and Egypt, but with its own unique technological and cultural signature. Unlike their contemporaries, the Harappans left behind no grand pyramids or monolithic statues. What they left instead was a stunning legacy of functionality, foresight, and urban intelligence. The gridded cities, one of the most remarkable features of Harappan cities, is their uniform layout. Streets were laid out in a grid pattern, with main roads and side alleys intersecting at right angles. This may seem trivial today, but at a time when most human settlements were chaotic clusters of huts and tents. The Harappan city plan reflected deliberate, advanced planning. Cities like Mohenjo-daro were divided into upper and lower parts, the citadel and the lower town. The citadel, elevated on mud brick platforms, housed important buildings like granaries, baths, and assembly halls, suggesting a degree of zoning and civic governance rarely seen in ancient times. Sewage and sanitation. A revolution in hygiene. Perhaps the Harappans' most astonishing invention was their sophisticated sanitation system. Almost every home was connected to a centralized drainage system. Covered drains ran along the streets, carrying waste and stormwater away from residential zones. Homes had private wells and indoor bathrooms, unheard of luxuries in the ancient world. In fact, the Harappans may have been the first to implement a citywide waste disposal strategy. Manholes and inspection chambers provided access for cleaning, and wastewater was likely treated before being discharged. This level of hygiene would not be seen again until the Roman Empire in some regions of the world. It's not until the 19th or even 20th century. Engineering precision. Harappan architecture demonstrates incredible standardization. Bricks used in construction were of uniform size and ratio 1:2:4, regardless of which city they came from. Such consistency suggests centralized control or shared. Architectural codes, essentially a prehistoric version of modern building regulations. Massive public structures like the Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro, likely used for ritual bathing, were waterproofed with tightly packed bricks and bitumen, showing an understanding of material science well beyond their time. Water management and storage. In addition to household wells, the Harappans built large reservoirs and stepwells to store and conserve water. Dholavira, a lesser-known Harappan city in present-day Gujarat, had an elaborate system of rainwater harvesting, channeling seasonal rainfall into massive underground tanks. This innovation was essential for survival in arid regions and remains relevant today as the world faces increasing water scarcity, commerce, and trade networks. The Harappans were avid traders. Artifacts from their cities have been found as far as Mesopotamia, indicating a vibrant and far-reaching trade network. They exported goods like carnelian beads, ivory, textiles, and pottery, and likely imported metals and luxury items. They used standardized weights and measures, beautifully carved cube weights made from chert, to maintain fairness in commerce. This level of standardization rivals that of modern regulatory systems. A mystery of language and legacy. Despite their brilliance, one thing continues to puzzle scholars: the Harappan script. Found on thousands of seals, tablets, and pottery shards, it remains undeciphered. Unlike the Rosetta Stone that helped decode Egyptian hieroglyphs, no bilingual artifact exists for Harappan writing. Without access to their texts, we are left to interpret their culture solely through archaeological evidence. This makes the clarity of their engineering and city planning all the more impressive. It speaks loudly. Even when their language remained silent, were the Harappans peaceful? Interestingly, Harappan cities show little evidence of warfare or militarization. Fortified structures were rare, and weapons were minimal. There is no conclusive evidence of large-scale armies or conquest-driven politics. Instead, their art and artifacts reflect trade, domestic life, and spiritual rituals. This has led some historians to argue that the Harappans achieved one of the rarest feats in human history: a large, organized, and advanced civilization that thrived primarily through cooperation rather than conflict. The decline, climate, trade, or transformation? The fall of the Indus Valley civilization remains one of history's great mysteries. Theories abound. A dramatic shift in monsoon patterns, the drying up of the Saraswati River, tectonic activity, or a gradual decline in trade. Rather than a sudden collapse, new evidence suggests a slow transformation. Harappan culture may have dispersed into rural areas, evolving into the Vedic societies that followed. Their urban glory faded, but their influence lingered. Lessons for the present urban design. Their city planning prefigures smart cities and modern zoning. Public health. Sanitation principles mirror modern sewer systems. Sustainability. Their water harvesting techniques could aid today's climate crisis. Peaceful governance. A model of nonviolent, trade-based societal structure. Conclusion. An overlooked marvel, the Harappans were not just builders of cities. They were designers of systems that supported large populations with hygiene, fairness, and efficiency. In many ways, their cities represent a peak in human adaptability and intelligence. Though their script is undeciphered, their ideas speak clearly across millennia: balance, precision, and sustainability. As we move forward in our exploration, the next segment will take us westward to the mighty Nile, where the ancient Egyptians mastered medicine, mechanics, and metaphysics in ways that still influence science and healing today. The Egyptians, masters of medicine and monument, the allure of the Nile. When people think of ancient Egypt, visions of pyramids, pharaohs, and hieroglyphs come to mind. But beneath the grandeur of tombs and temples lies a sophisticated civilization that laid some of the foundational principles of science, architecture, and medicine. Egypt wasn't just the land of gods and gold, it was a crucible of innovation, particularly in fields that directly impact our lives today. A health system ahead of its time. One of the most overlooked aspects of ancient Egyptian society is its medical knowledge. Medical papyri, such as the Edwin Smith and Eber scrolls, reveal a surprisingly advanced understanding of the human body. These texts describe diagnoses, prognoses, and even surgical procedures with a level of clinical detachment that echoes modern medical practice. The Edwin Smith papyrus, dated around 1600 BCE, but believed to be based on texts from 3000 BCE, is essentially a trauma surgery manual. It outlines treatments for head injuries, broken bones, and spinal trauma. In one case, it describes a vertebra dislocation and advises that the patient cannot be cured. A diagnosis any modern doctor would agree with without surgical tools. Meanwhile, the Ebers Papyrus lists over 700 remedies and recipes for everything from asthma and toothaches to mental disorders. The Egyptians used honey as an antiseptic, pomegranate as a treatment for intestinal worms, and willow bark, now known to contain salicin, the precursor to aspirin for pain relief. Modern pharmacology still borrows from their botanical wisdom. Doctors of divinity and discipline. Egyptian physicians were specialists. Some treated only the eyes, others the stomach or ears. This degree of specialization is astonishing given the time period and implies a deep institutional knowledge base. Physicians trained in temples, and their role was both scientific and spiritual. Illness was often seen as a mix of physical imbalance and divine punishment, leading to treatments that combined practical remedies with ritualistic prayers, mathematics, and monumental precision to build the pyramids. You don't just need brute strength, you need math, lots of it. The Egyptians developed a number system based on tens and used it for architectural calculations, land surveying, and even taxation. Their knowledge of geometry was not abstract but extremely applied. The construction of the Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, reflects an extraordinary understanding of measurements, slope angles, and alignment. The sides of the pyramid are aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal directions, and its proportions encode mathematical constants like pi and the golden ratio. Whether by intention or accident remains a debate. But the precision is undeniable. Recent studies even suggest that the Egyptians may have used a rudimentary form of calculus to calculate the volumes and areas of irregular objects like grain silos and pyramids, engineering water and life, while Mesopotamians and Harappans also had advanced water management systems. The Egyptians mastered irrigation and basin farming in a desert climate. They built canals, dikes, and sluice gates to harness the annual flooding of the Nile, effectively turning a barren landscape into an agricultural powerhouse. They also invented the Shadoofa hand-operated device to lift water from a lower to a higher level for irrigation. This simple technology, still used in parts of the world today, demonstrates their knack for practical problem-solving with minimal resources. Paper, pens, and publishing, we owe a lot to the Egyptians for how we record and transmit knowledge. While the Chinese invented paper as we know it today, the Egyptians were the first to create a reliable writing surface. Papyrus, made from the pith of the papyrus plant, this material was durable, lightweight, and easy to store. Along with ink made from soot and vegetable gum and red pens, papyrus allowed the Egyptians to compile administrative documents, literature, medical texts, and even personal letters. Libraries in temples and state archives allowed knowledge to be centralized, studied, and passed down, a crucial step in any civilization's intellectual development. Cosmetics and chemistry, the Egyptians weren't just functional thinkers, they were aesthetes. They developed cosmetics not just for beauty but also for health and ritual. Kohl eyeliner, often made from lead-based minerals, helped reduce glare from the sun and had antibacterial properties. Their perfumes and ointments were often sophisticated chemical concoctions used in both daily life and embalming. Indeed, embalming itself represents a complex understanding of chemistry and human anatomy. The process of mummification was not just spiritual, but also scientific, removing moisture, preventing decomposition, and preserving the body for millennia. The temples, as laboratories temples in ancient Egypt, were more than places of worship. They were centers of education, medicine, astronomy, and administration. Priests were often the scholars of their day, responsible for maintaining calendars, observing the stars, and tracking agricultural cycles. These observatories helped Egyptians develop a solar calendar of 365 days, a system that closely resembles our own and later influenced the Roman calendar. Astronomy and alignment. Speaking of stars, the ancient Egyptians were master sky watchers. They tracked constellations and planetary movements to guide their agricultural and religious calendars. The alignment of the pyramids with celestial bodies, particularly Orion's belt and the North Star, hints at a sophisticated grasp of astronomy that many modern civilizations didn't achieve until thousands of years later. The precision with which temples and monuments were aligned to solstices and equinoxes, such as the famous Abu Simbel Temple, where light illuminates the inner sanctuary only twice a year, is a testament to their astronomical prowess. Legacy through layers. Much of what we attribute to Greek or Roman knowledge was inherited or appropriated from Egypt. Thinkers like Pythagoras and Hippocrates studied in Egypt, learning from a civilization that had already accumulated thousands of years of empirical wisdom. Even as the ancient kingdom declined, its intellectual influence rippled across continents and centuries. Today, you may undergo surgery using tools that resemble those depicted in Egyptian carvings. You read and write using alphabetic principles derived from hieroglyphs. You measure land, time, and angles with concepts the Egyptians helped standardize. And when you take an aspirin for a headache, you're echoing a remedy thousands of years old. A civilization not lost but misunderstood, Egypt is often romanticized for its mystique, but underestimated in its innovation. It was not just a kingdom of gold and glory, but a civilization of scientists, engineers, doctors, and record keepers. They built for eternity, not just in stone, but in ideas. Their monumental legacy is not just in what you can visit in Luxor or Cairo, but in what lives invisibly within our own systems of medicine, architecture, and thought. The Chinese dynasties, inventors of everything from paper to rockets beyond the Great Wall, a legacy of invention. When the phrase ancient innovation comes up, few civilizations match the sheer breadth and brilliance of ancient China. For over 3,000 years, spanning the Shang-Zhou, Qin, Han, Tang, Song, and Ming dynasties, China not only created a robust and enduring empire, but quietly revolutionized the world through technological innovation. From humble items like paper and ink to world-changing inventions such as the compass and gunpowder, ancient China was a hotbed of ideas that propelled global progress, long before Europe emerged from the Dark Ages. Paper and the written word. While Egypt's papyrus and Mesopotamia's clay tablets were early writing mediums, it was the Chinese invention of paper credited to Cia Lun of the Han Dynasty around 105 CE that truly transformed communication. Unlike papyrus or parchment, Chinese paper was made from mulberry bark, hemp, rags, and even old fishing nets. It was affordable, durable, and scalable, key for spreading literature, bureaucracy, and culture across the vast empire. Paper allowed the Chinese to mass-produce not just books and scrolls, but maps, medical texts, calendars, and bureaucratic documents. This innovation was so impactful that it remained a closely guarded secret for centuries before it slowly spread west via the Silk Road. Printing, the power of repetition. China didn't stop at paper. During the Tang Dynasty, block printing became widespread. Monks would carve entire pages of Buddhist texts onto wooden blocks, ink them, and press them onto paper. By the Song Dynasty, movable clay type had been developed by Baisheng centuries before Gutenberg's press. This leap allowed China to standardize education and disseminate information on an unprecedented scale. Think about it. The information age we live in arguably began with this spark, the ability to replicate knowledge, preserve it, and share it. The four great inventions often referred to collectively, paper, printing, the compass, and gunpowder, are known in China as the four great inventions. Each reshaped not only Chinese society, but also had ripple effects across the globe. The compass, invented during the Han Dynasty and perfected by the Song, the magnetic compass revolutionized navigation. Before this, sailors relied on stars and landmarks. With a magnetic needle floating on water or mounted on a pivot, Chinese mariners could explore the open seas more confidently in a new age of naval dominance. Gunpowder, created accidentally by alchemists searching for an immortality elixir. Gunpowder was first documented in the 9th century. Initially used for fireworks and religious ceremonies, it quickly became the backbone of military strategy. Hydraulics and agricultural ingenuity, the Chinese excelled at harnessing nature. Hydraulic engineering during the Han Dynasty led to massive irrigation networks, sluice gates, and flood control systems that could rival those of Mesopotamia and Egypt. The Dujiangyan irrigation system, constructed around 256 BCE, still functions today and stands as a marvel of environmental engineering. They also developed the seed drill during the 2nd century BCIA device that planted seeds at the proper depth and spacing, vastly improving crop yields. Europe wouldn't adopt this tool until the 17th century. Medicine and the balance of life. Traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, was deeply rooted in the concepts of balance yin and yang, and energy flow qi. Far from mystical, this approach was systematized over centuries. The Huangdi Najing, or Yellow Emperor's Inner Canon, is considered the oldest medical textbook in the world and laid the groundwork for acupuncture, herbal medicine, and holistic health. Many of the herbs documented then, such as ginseng and ginger, are now recognized for their therapeutic effects. Acupuncture, once dismissed by the West, is today increasingly accepted and studied in clinical settings. Seismographs, clocks, and early robotics. Did you know the Chinese invented the world's first seismoscope in 132 CE? Zhang Heng, a Han Dynasty astronomer, developed a bronze device that could detect earthquakes hundreds of miles away, an incredible feat in geophysics. Water clocks and astronomical observatories during the Song Dynasty were so precise they included armillary spheres and rotating gear systems, laying the groundwork for mechanical clocks in medieval Europe. Perhaps most fascinating is Su Song's astronomical clock tower from the 11th century. It featured a water-powered escapement mechanism, a technology that wouldn't be reinvented in the West for another 300 years. Some historians even argue it qualifies as an early form of a programmable machine. Silk, porcelain, and industrial art. Silk wasn't just a luxury fabric. It was a symbol of international trade and cultural exchange. The tightly guarded secret of sericulture, silkworm farming, made China immensely wealthy and formed the foundation of the Silk Road. Similarly, porcelain developed during the Tang Dynasty, combined art and chemistry to create elegant, durable ceramics. The West became so obsessed with it that the term China became synonymous with the material itself. Philosophy and logic systems. Alongside technological innovation came philosophical clarity. Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism were not just belief systems, but frameworks for social behavior, governance, and scientific reasoning. These schools of thought emphasized observation, moderation, and harmony with nature, values that informed Chinese innovation and sustainability. Why don't we learn this in school? The short answer? Eurocentrism. For centuries, Western historians downplayed or ignored non-European contributions to science and technology. Only in recent decades has the academic world begun to reevaluate and recognize China's central role in shaping the modern world. The hidden legacy in your everyday life, from the fireworks you enjoy on New Year's Eve to the compass that guides your phone, GPS, from herbal teas that soothe your stomach to the very concept of mass printing, China's ancient ingenuity surrounds you. Modern tech giants in Silicon Valley often get the spotlight, but the spark of inspiration began long before, lit by inventors. Engineers and scholars of dynasties past. Their brilliance didn't vanish with time, it evolved, silently guiding human progress. The Greeks, philosophers, engineers, and hidden machines, rethinking the philosopher's civilization. When most people think of ancient Greece, images of togas, democracy, and philosophical debates flood the mind. Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates dominate the narrative, often overshadowing a remarkable reality. The ancient Greeks were also pioneering engineers, mathematicians, and inventors. Their genius lay not only in asking the big questions, but in solving tangible problems of physics, mechanics, and design, often centuries ahead of their time. The Greeks didn't just dream about utopias. They built theaters with perfect acoustics, developed complex mechanical devices, and even flirted with concepts that eerily resemble modern computers. The Antikythera mechanism, the ancient computer, Gish discovered in a shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera in 1901. This bronze device is initially dismissed as a corroded lump, shocked historians once. Sir X-ray imaging revealed its inner workings. The Antikythera mechanism, dated to around 100 BCE, is now widely regarded as the world's first analog computer. Composed of over 30 intricately interlocking gears, could calculate astronomical positions, lunar cycles, solar eclipses, and even the timing of the ancient Olympic Games. Nothing of similar complexity appears again in history until medieval Europe. More than 1,000 years later, hydraulics and steam power, Harappans of Alexandria. Harappans, or hero of Alexandria, a Greek engineer from the 1st century CE, was the Da Vinci of his time. His inventions straddle the line between entertainment and industrial genius. Eolipile, also known as Harappans' engine, was a steam-powered rotating sphere. While it never led to industrial revolution at the time, it was a functional steam turbine, a concept that would re-emerge in the 18th century. Automatic doors. Using weights and pulleys triggered by fire and steam, Harappans developed temple doors that opened automatically. Vending machines. In temples, people could insert a coin into a device to receive a measured dose of holy water. Sound familiar? Harappans' ideas weren't isolated novelties. It suggests a society on the brink of mechanical revolution, stalled, perhaps only by lack of mass production infrastructure or shifting political priorities. Engineering and urban infrastructure. The Greeks engineered aqueducts, tunnels, and urban centers that rivaled those of Rome. The Tunnel of Eupalinos, built on the island of Samos in the 6th century BCE, is a mind-boggling feat. Dug from both ends simultaneously, it met almost perfectly in the middle, a marvel of geometry and surveying. Greek cities also had drainage systems, public toilets, and central markets designed with crowd flow in mind. Their amphitheaters were acoustically tuned so that whispers on stage could be heard in the back rows. Mathematics and mechanical advantage, while Pythagoras is often reduced to his famous triangle theorem. His school laid the foundations for number theory. Euclid's Elements was the world's most influential textbook until Newton's Principia. Archimedes, arguably the greatest mathematical mind of the ancient world, contributed equations that govern physics and engineering to this day. Compound pulleys, hydrostatics, buoyancy principle. Levers and catapults. His statement, "Give me a place to stand and I will move the earth," was on just philosophical. It reflected real engineering prowess, medical innovation, and anatomy. The Greek physician Hippocrates, known as the father of medicine, transformed healthcare from superstition to systematic practice. The Hippocratic corpus documented symptoms, diagnoses, and treatments. Surgeons like Galen studied anatomy through animal dissection, so understanding organs and systems centuries before Renaissance anatomists confirmed them. They used scalpels, bone drills, forceps, and cautery irons. They practiced trepanation, drilling holes in the skull to treat. Head trauma understanding enough not to kill the patient in the process. Optics, automation, and geometry philosophers like Euclid also delved into optics, exploring light reflection and refraction. They theorized how the eye works, how mirrors function, and how angles affect visual perception, concepts later critical to telescopes and photography. The Greeks also tinkered with automata, mechanical birds, moving statues, and clocks powered by water and weights. These devices were part theater, part science, and part prophetic vision of automation's potential. Why didn't they industrialize? Despite having foundational knowledge in mechanics, metallurgy, and physics, ancient Greece never had an industrial revolution. Several theories attempt to explain this. Slave labor. Much of the economy depended on slaves. Reducing incentive for labor-saving devices. Fragmented city-states. Political disunity stifled widespread adoption of innovations. Lack of financial backing. Wealth was often hoarded by elites interested in status, not public innovation. Nevertheless, their ideas survived through texts, translations, and later Roman adaptation, eventually fueling the Renaissance in modern science. Greek influence in modern technologies, your geometry homework, traces back to Euclid. Steam engines owe a conceptual nod to Heron. GPS and astronomy apps echo the mechanics of the Antikythera. Modern medicine still holds Hippocratic principles at its core. So, next time you use a vending machine, adjust your telescope. Or marvel at Google Maps predicting a solar eclipse. Thank a Greek philosopher-engineer. Legacy beyond myth, the ancient Greeks weren't just dreamers or idealists, they were builders and doers. Their inventions were hidden beneath layers of philosophical reverence, war-torn history, and academic snobbery. But make no mistake, their genius was mechanical, practical, and very, very real. We remember their myths, their dramas, and their philosophical quandaries. It's time we also remember their machines. The Mayans, masters of time, and the stars, the jungle civilizers. Hidden. Beneath thick jungles and ancient vines of Mesoamerica lie the ruins of one of the most sophisticated civilizations the world has ever known. The Maya, though popular culture often focuses on their dramatic calendar or mysterious decline, few fully grasp the stunning scope of their scientific and technological achievements. From astronomy to mathematics, from water filtration to city planning, the Maya developed systems that rival modern ingenuity without metal tools, beasts of burden, or even the wheel in transportation. How did they accomplish so much, seemingly cut off from the rest of the ancient world? The answers lie in the stars, the soil, and a relentless devotion to observation and adaptation. Masters of the calendar and astronomy. One of the Mayans' most celebrated inventions was their calendar system, far more complex than our modern Gregorian calendar. They developed 3 interlocking calendars: Tzolk'in, 260-day sacred calendar; Hab, 365-day solar calendar, long count calendar used to track vast spans of time. Together, these allowed them to calculate not only agricultural cycles and religious festivals, but also celestial events with shocking precision. The Mayans predicted solar and lunar eclipses centuries in advance, without telescopes or metal instruments. In cities and temples and observatories were constructed to align perfectly with solstices, equinoxes, and planetary movements. The Harappans Observatory is a spiraling stone structure whose window placements match key astronomical events. Mathematics. Concept of zero and base 20 system. Long before the Europeans adopted the concept of zero from Indian mathematicians, the Maya had independently invented it by at least 36 BCE. This abstract concept was central to their number system, allowing them to track dates and perform complex calculations efficiently. Their vigesimal base 20 system used dots and bars for digits and a shell symbol for zero. This wasn't just for record keeping. It powered their astronomical calculations, architecture, and agriculture. Engineering feats without iron or wheels, the Maya built vast cities like Tikal Palenque and Calakmul in harsh jungle environments. They didn't have iron tools or wheeled carts, yet they constructed multi-story temples, sprawling plazas, and ceremonial causeways Sakbib that connected regions over great distances. They quarried and moved massive stone blocks using manpower and ingenuity. Their tools were crafted from obsidian and flint, which could be sharper than modern surgical steel. Advanced urban planning and water systems. The Maya were brilliant urban engineers. Cities like Tikal boasted sophisticated layouts, with central ceremonial areas, administrative zones, and residential neighborhoods. One of their most unsung innovations was water management. In regions where rainfall was seasonal, they built extensive reservoirs, underground cisterns, chaltens, and even early water filtration systems. Recent studies found that the Maya used quartz and zeolite minerals, still used in modern filtration, to purify drinking water over 2,000 years ago. Agricultural innovation in challenging environments. Faced with nutrient-poor tropical soils, the Maya developed ingenious farming techniques. Terracing prevented soil erosion and conserved water on hillsides. Raised fields, chinampas, used in flood-prone areas to create arable land. Slash-and-burn milpa balanced forest ecology with crop rotation. They cultivated a wide range of crops, including maize, cacao, squash, beans, and chili peppers, forming the backbone of their economy and rituals. Written language and books. The Maya had a fully developed system of writing logo, syllabic, script, one of only a few independently developed writing systems in human history. Their texts were painted on codices, bark paper books, carved into monuments, and etched into ceramics. While most codices were destroyed during the Spanish conquest, surviving ones like the Dresden Codex contained complex astronomical tables, ritual schedules, and historical records. Architecture with acoustics and symbolism. The Maya weren't just builders, they were acoustic engineers and symbolic planners. At the Temple of In, a clap at the base of the staircase produces an echo that mimics the call of a sacred Quetzal bird. During equinoxes, the shadow of a serpent descends the temple's steps, a stunning fusion of astronomy, math, and art. They built corbelled arches, vaulted ceilings, and stuccoed facades, all without metal nails or fasteners. Their pyramid temples aligned with celestial bodies and cosmological beliefs, turning cities into living calendars and maps of the universe. Medicine, healing, and botanical knowledge. The Maya practiced a form of holistic medicine that blended herbal knowledge, ritual, and surgery. They used hundreds of plant species for specific ailments, some of which are still under study for modern pharmaceuticals. Shamans served as spiritual and medical leaders, blending diagnostics, ritual cleansing, and community health. Why the Maya are often overlooked. The Maya collapse around 900 CE led to the abandonment of major cities. Much of their knowledge was lost or destroyed by Spanish conquistadors and missionaries. This, coupled with Eurocentric narratives of progress, contributed to the myth that the Maya were backward or mystical. But archaeology and science are now correcting this view. Satellite imaging, LiDAR mapping, and interdisciplinary research have uncovered vast networks of roads, farms, and cities that suggest the Maya population may have numbered in the millions. Maya innovations that still influence today? Zero. Central to all digital computing. Astronomy influences modern Mesoamerican calendars and agricultural cycles. Acoustics in architecture, used in stadiums, theaters, and museums. Water filtration, concepts used in rural and emergency purification systems. A civilization still alive while the classic Maya cities fell? The Maya people did not disappear. Millions still live in Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras, preserving language, customs, and even calendrical systems. Their ancestors weren't just astronomers and architects. They were visionary thinkers whose unsung inventions continue to ripple through time. The Persians, engineers of empire and everyday comfort. The empire beneath the sand, often overshadowed by the grandeur of Rome or the mystique of Egypt. The Persian Empire, particularly during the Achaemenid period, c. 552–330 BCE, was a technological and administrative powerhouse. It was a realm that spanned 3 continents, bound together not just by conquest, but by innovative infrastructure, fair governance, and radical ideas of comfort and order. From the scorching deserts of Iran to the peaks of Anatolia and the banks of the Indus, the Persians engineered solutions for geography, logistics, and human well-being that still echo in our daily lives. The Royal Road, ancient superhighway. One of the greatest achievements of the Achaemenid Empire was its infrastructure of movement. The Royal Road, stretching over 2,500 kilometers from Sardis in modern-day Turkey to Susa in Iran, was a marvel of ancient logistics. Postal relays with fresh horses and couriers allowed messages to cross the empire in days. Travelers and traders could move swiftly and safely thanks to security outposts and way stations. The road promoted economic integration, cultural exchange, and military efficiency. The concept of paved, maintained roads, scheduled messengers, and state-sponsored infrastructure laid the groundwork for Roman roads and even modern postal systems. Qanat systems, underground water highways. In the arid regions of Persia, fresh water was not just a luxury, it was a necessity for survival. The Persian solution? Qanats. These were underground channels that tapped into aquifers in higher elevations and gently sloped down to bring water to settlements and farmland. Qanat cities were built around Qanat-fed oases. The system relied on gravity, requiring no pumps or power. Maintenance shafts every few meters allowed for repairs and inspection. Some Qanats are still in use today in Iran, Afghanistan, and North Africa, a testament to their enduring efficiency. Air conditioning before electricity. The wind catchers, badgers, the hot, dry climates of Persian cities demanded innovation in cooling. The answer came in the form of badgers, or wind catchers, vertical structures, that funneled wind into buildings and expelled warm air. These towers used pressure differentials to ventilate and cool. Combined with thick mud brick walls and underground rooms sardabs, they created naturally cooled environments. Variants of this design influenced Islamic and Mediterranean architecture. In an age before fans and air conditioners, Persians created passive cooling systems using only the elements. The Paradise Garden. Designing for psychological well-being, the word paradise comes from the Persian paradisa, meaning a walled garden. These gardens weren't just aesthetic. They were engineered sanctuaries designed for reflection, social gathering, and ecological balance. Divided by water channels, often in a cross shape representing the four rivers of life, lined with fruit trees. Shade and flowers symbolized cosmic harmony. Used in royal palaces and urban design, this concept of green, structured public and private gardens influenced Islamic, Mughal, and even European Renaissance garden design. Standardization and measurement systems. The Achaemenids understood the power of standardization. To manage their vast territory, weights and measures were regulated across provinces. Standardized coin system. The gold daric and silver siglos, simplified trade. They maintained uniform building codes, seen in Persepolis and administrative hubs. These practices enabled massive construction projects, efficient taxation, and bureaucratic clarity precursors to modern civil systems. Multilingual bureaucracy and document preservation, the Persian Empire was perhaps the first truly multicultural empire to govern such diversity. Official decrees like the Behistun inscription were carved in 3 languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. Clerks and scribes kept records on clay tablets, parchments, and stone. Multilingual governance enabled local autonomy while maintaining central control. Their model of decentralized administration inspired later empires, including the Romans and Ottomans. Medicine and healing centers, Persian medicine, influenced by Babylonian, Indian, and Greek traditions, was surprisingly advanced. Academies like Gundashaper became medical training centers centuries before European universities. Physicians practiced diagnoses, herbal remedies, and minor surgeries. Hospitals were established as places of learning and healing. Their writings on hygiene, seasonal health, and therapeutic diets influenced Islamic medicine and European medieval practices. Architecture with function and grandeur. From Persepolis to Pasargadae, Persian architecture was not just majestic, it was functional. Use of double-columned halls apodanas allowed for large shaded gatherings. Reliefs and inscriptions conveyed legal, moral, and historical messages. Innovations in vaulted ceilings, stone masonry, and urban symmetry shaped global architecture. Why the Persians are often forgotten. Despite their achievements, Persians often get overshadowed due to Greek-centric historical narratives, for example, Herodotus painting Persians as villains. Later Islamic Sabic conquests that rewrote historical memory loss of original buildings and libraries to war and time. But modern archaeology and historical reevaluation are revealing just how sophisticated and humane Persian innovations were. Persian inventions that live on postal systems. The concept of reliable, state-run courier networks, passive cooling, still used in sustainable architecture, urban planning, grid layouts. In public squares, standardized money and measurements, a legacy of comfort and connectivity. The Persians weren't just warriors and rulers, they were human-centric engineers. Their innovations, born out of necessity and vision, created a connected empire where people could travel safely, drink clean water, cool their homes, and thrive in cities planned for both order and beauty. As you sip cold water in an air-conditioned room, shop using a common currency, or walk a shaded boulevard, remember, you're living with the legacy of Persia. The Islamic Golden Age, the hidden spark behind modern science when the world slept. They awakened the light of knowledge between the 8th and 14th centuries, while much of Europe was plunged into the so-called Dark Ages. A renaissance of science, philosophy, and invention flourished across the Islamic world. This era, known as the Islamic Golden Age, centered around cities like Baghdad, Cairo, and Samarkand, became a beacon of intellectual brilliance. These were not just spiritual or military empires. These were hubs of interdisciplinary genius, where thinkers, scholars, and engineers from various backgrounds gathered, translated, expanded, and created innovations that still shape our modern world. The House of Wisdom, humanity's first think tank in Baghdad. Basid Khalif Alman established the legendary Beit al-Hikmah, House of Wisdom, part library, part university, part research institute. Scholars translated texts from Greek, Sanskrit, Syriac, and Persian into Arabic. Knowledge was preserved, compared, and critically analyzed. It was here that many Greek philosophies and scientific texts were saved from extinction, later to be retranslated into Latin and reignite the European Renaissance. Think of it as the Silicon Valley and MIT of the 9th century. Algebra, algorithms, and the birth of computer science. The term algebra comes from the Arabic word algebr, used by Persian polymath al-Khwarizmi in his foundational mathematical text, Al-Kitab o-Mukhtasar fi Hisab, al-Gabala. Al-Khwarizmi's work systematized solving equations and introduced zero as a critical placeholder. His name gives us the term algorithm, the basis for modern computing. Without his pioneering work, we may not have had computer science, coding, or even the way we balance equations in school today. Optics and the birth of scientific method. Ibn al-Haytham al-Haysan is a trailblazing thinker who revolutionized how we understand light and vision. Disproved ancient theories that the eye emitted rays to see, conducted controlled experiments to test light behavior, pioneering the scientific method. His work, Kitab al-Manizar, Book of Optics, laid the groundwork for modern optics, photography, and physics. He is often considered the first true scientist, due to his emphasis on observation, hypothesis, and experimentation, surgical instruments, and medical ethics. Al-Zahrawi Abolkasas, a 10th century Andalusian physician, authored a 30-volume medical encyclopedia, Tasrif, complete with illustrations of over 200 surgical instruments, many of which are still in use today. Introduced techniques in cauterization, bone setting, and obstetrics. Emphasized patient care, sanitation, and ethics. His work inspired generations of physicians in both the East and West. Meanwhile, Ibn Sina Avicenna wrote the Canon of Medicine, a standard medical text in Europe for nearly 500 years. Engineering marvels, clocks, robots, and flying machines. Al-Ghazali, 12th century inventor from Mesopotamia, crafted mechanical marvels that seem like they belong in a steampunk novel. Intricate automated water clocks, programmable, with moving parts, mechanical musicians, and humanoid robots powered by water and weights engineering manuals that described gears, cranks, and hydraulic systems. Leonardo da Vinci would later sketch many similar ideas centuries after Al-Jazari built them. Chemistry before chemistry. Alchemy to science. Jabir ibn Hayyan Gabor is considered the father of modern chemistry. Though steeped in alchemy, His rigorous experimentation and record-keeping transformed mysticism into science, developed distillation, crystallization, and acid purification techniques, invented many laboratory instruments still used today, advocated for observation-based research and reproducibility. His legacy contributed directly to the birth of modern chemistry and pharmacology, astronomy that reached the stars. Islamic astronomers advanced planetary models and navigational tools, created precise star charts and catalogs, improved and refined the astrolabe, essential for navigation and prayer, proposed planetary motion models that challenged Ptolemaic ideas. Nasir al-Din al-Tusi's planetary model influenced Copernicus's heliocentric theory, showing how the Islamic world bridged classical and modern astronomy. Libraries and knowledge management cities like Baghdad had libraries that housed hundreds of thousands of books, meticulously categorized and copied. Cataloging systems based on subject and author. Paper manufacturing techniques improved from the Chinese model, allowed for mass copying. This system of knowledge management influenced the later European university system. Women in science and society, though patriarchal in many ways, the Islamic Golden Age did include notable women scholars. Lubnavad was a mathematician and calligrapher in the Umayyad court. Fatima al-Fihri founded the University of Al-Qarawiyyin in 859 CE in Fez, Morocco, the oldest existing university in the world. Their contributions challenge modern assumptions about historical gender roles in STEM. Why we forgot the decline of the Islamic Golden Age came due to invasions like the Mongol sack of Baghdad in 1258, internal political fragmentation, later, colonial narratives that minimized non-European contributions. But the legacy remains hidden in your math textbooks, medical practices, optical tools, and coding languages. Inventions that still influence us: algebra and algorithms, experimental science and optics, surgical instruments and medical training, mechanical engineering and timekeeping, astronomy and navigation tools. The hidden spark lives on. When you code a program, read a prescription, calculate a mortgage, or use a qamar, you're touching the genius of the Islamic Golden Age. Their innovations lit a torch that carried humanity from the ancient to the modern world. As we uncover their brilliance, we are reminded the roots of progress are global, ancient, and deeply interconnected. The Indus Valley Civilization. The silent pioneers of urban life, the mysterious architects of order and hygiene, long before Rome had aqueducts or Greece laid the foundations of democracy. There was a civilization in South Asia that thrived quietly and efficiently. The Indus Valley Civilization, IVC, also called the Harappan civilization, flourished around 2600 to 1900 BCE in what is now modern-day Pakistan and northwest India. Despite its vast scale and sophistication, we know surprisingly little about it. Their script remains undeciphered, and much of their history lies buried beneath modern cities. But what archaeologists have unearthed paints a stunning picture of urban planning, public health, and engineering mastery. Urban planning ahead of its time, the IVC cities like Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, and Lothal reveal a civilization obsessed with order, cleanliness, and public infrastructure. Grid-based street layouts. Streets intersected at right angles, forming neighborhoods comparable to modern Manhattan. Standardized building materials. Bricks across sites followed a uniform ratio 1:2:4, suggesting centralized production and quality control. Walled citadels and residential quarters were clearly delineated, pointing to a stratified but organized urban structure. These features weren't copied from others. They originated over 1,000 years before similar concepts appeared in Mesopotamia or Egypt. The world's first plumbing and sanitation system, perhaps the IVC's most astonishing achievement, was its sanitation. Every home had access to water either from a private well or a communal one nearby. Bathrooms with drains connected to an intricate network of covered sewer systems. Wastewater flowed into main drains, which led to brick-lined soak pits or cesspools. This system was centuries ahead of its time, rivaling, even surpassing plumbing in 18th century Europe. This focus on cleanliness reflects not only engineering, know-how, but a civic consciousness rarely seen in early civilizations. Standardization and metrology. Indus craftsmen used standardized weights and measures for trade and construction. Weights were based on binary and decimal systems, made of chert, shell, or metal. Tools like measuring rods and scales show an impressive grasp of geometry and proportion. This consistency hints at a centralized governance or cultural agreement that prioritized fairness, precision, and order. Engineering. The dockyard. The port of Lothal, the city of Lothal, located near the Gulf of Comhat, boasted a rectangular dockyard, perhaps the world's first, designed with sluice gates to manage water flow and silt, allowed ocean-going vessels to dock and unload goods efficiently. Supported a vibrant maritime trade network, connecting the IVC with Mesopotamia and beyond. This level of hydraulic engineering, even in a challenging tidal environment, shows a deep understanding of fluid dynamics and coastal planning. Craftsmanship and technology. The IVC artisans were masters of their trades, produced microscopic carnelian beads, drilled with precision tools that baffle modern engineers, excelled in ceramics, metallurgy, and sculpture, used copper and bronze tools, and even crafted toys and gaming pieces, showing leisure had a place in their society. Medicine and plant use. Though direct records are missing, evidence of dental work such as drilled molars found in skeletons suggests a practice of primitive dentistry over 7,000 years ago. Seeds and plant remains indicate knowledge of medicinal herbs, dietary diversity, domestication techniques. This points to a sophisticated understanding of health and agriculture. Decentralized yet connected. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, the IVC showed no evidence of temples, palaces, or monumental rulers. No grand tombs or statues of kings. No overt signs of religious domination or war. This may suggest a decentralized, egalitarian governance model, where civic responsibility, trade, and cultural cohesion took precedence over conquest. Why we know so little. The tragedy of the IVC is its silence. The Indus script remains undeciphered, so their literature, laws, and myths remain locked away. Many sites lie beneath modern development, or remain unexplored due to political boundaries. Natural disasters and shifting rivers like the Saraswati may have led to its collapse. Still, what remains is inspiring. Legacy in the shadows. The concept of urban zoning and public sanitation. The idea of clean water access as a right, standardization in trade and commerce. Early forms of hydraulic engineering and coastal infrastructure echoes in modern life. The silent city-building genius of the Indus Valley still echoes today, in every flush of a toilet, in every traffic grid or zoning law, in our obsession with clean water, order, and efficient urban design. They may not have left behind grand monuments or epic poetry, but they left behind a blueprint for civilized life quietly, efficiently, and enduringly. The Nubians. Africa's overlooked innovators beyond the pyramids, kingdom of ingenuity and influence. When most people think of ancient Africa, they immediately picture Egypt pyramids, pharaohs, and hieroglyphs. But to the south, in what is now Sudan, another mighty civilization flourished in parallel, and sometimes in rivalry with Egypt. The kingdom of Kush, also known as Nubia. Far from being a mere shadow of Egypt, the Nubians were architects, metalworkers, astronomers, and innovators in their own right, with a legacy that has often been underrepresented in global history. A civilization of builders and warriors, the kingdom of Kush emerged around 2000 BCE, reaching its zenith between 800 BCE and 350 CE. Its capital cities Kerma, Napata, and Mera boasted monumental architecture, thriving trade routes, and a unique cultural identity. Nubian pyramids, especially in Meru, outnumber Egypt's and feature distinct steep angles and burial practices. Structures like temples, palaces, and reservoirs show a strong command of both Egyptian influence and local innovation. Military records suggest elite archers, known as the bowmen of Kush, were feared and respected by even the Egyptian pharaohs. Advanced metallurgy and ironworking, one of Nubia's most important and overlooked innovations, was in metallurgy. By the 7th century BCE, Meru became one of the first major centers of iron smelting in Africa. The city was surrounded by slag heaps, evidence of intensive iron production. Nubian blacksmiths crafted tools, weapons, and construction materials that fueled both their economy and military. This early mastery of iron placed Nubia ahead of many civilizations in Africa and Asia, contributing to their strength and resilience. Hydraulic engineering and water management. Living along the Nile, the Nubians developed sophisticated techniques to manage water in an arid environment. wells and underground cisterns captured seasonal rainwater. Evidence of canal-like irrigation systems suggests underground water channels that minimized evaporation. Artificial reservoirs and catchment basins were used to store and distribute water for agriculture and urban use. These systems allowed for the cultivation of sorghum, barley, dates, and cotton, enabling surplus food production and textile industry growth. Language, writing, and the Meroitic script in a bold cultural declaration of independence from Egypt. Nubians created their own written language, the Meroitic script. Developed around 300 BCE as one of the earliest alpha-syllabic writing systems. It combined alphabetic and syllabic elements and was written in two forms, hieroglyphic for monuments and cursive for daily use. To this day, Meroitic remains only partially deciphered, much like the Indus script. Its very existence points to a literate, bureaucratic, and culturally distinct society determined to write its own history, astronomy, and sacred geometry. The Nubians were astronomically inclined. Temples and pyramids were aligned with celestial events, particularly solstices and equinoxes. The Napatan calendar and ritual timing reflect careful astronomical observation. Burial structures often had solar alignments, suggesting reverence for the sun and cosmic cycles. They shared and likely exchanged astronomical knowledge with Egyptians and other neighboring cultures. Art culture and royal power Nubian culture blended local traditions with Egyptian religious and aesthetic elements. Candaces, queens or queen mothers, held immense power. Some even led military campaigns and ruled in their own names. Statues and pottery depict unique artistic styles with bold colors, patterns, and iconography. Like Apedmach, the lion god, existed alongside Egyptian gods, showcasing religious syncretism. This cultural hybridity made Nubia not just a recipient of Egyptian culture, but a powerful force shaping the region's identity. The Nubian pharaohs of Egypt. During the 25th dynasty of Egypt, circa 744 to 656 BCE, Nubian kings conquered and ruled Egypt. Known as the Black Pharaohs, they unified the Nile Valley from Nubia to the Mediterranean. Kings like Pi and Taharqa emphasized piety, justice, and monumental construction. They revived pyramid building, religious reform, and public infrastructure across Egypt. Rather than destroy, they sought to restore and preserve an act of cultural stewardship. Trade networks and economic reach. The Nubians were global traders long before globalization. Traded gold, ebony, ivory, incense, and ostrich feathers as far as the Mediterranean, Arabian Peninsula, and India. Meroitic ceramics and inscriptions have been found thousands of miles from their homeland. They minted their own coinage, a sign of economic sophistication. Their strategic location along the Nile and Red Sea made them a key node in international commerce. What we inherited from Nubia, though, often eclipsed in mainstream history. Nubia's contributions endure. Mastery of ironworking long before Europe's industrial age. Creation of gender-inclusive governance, with queens wielding real political and military power. Development of unique scripts and a tradition of multilingual literacy. Hydraulic systems that prefigured modern water conservation strategies, erased but not forgotten. Colonial-era historians often dismiss Nubia as a peripheral or derivative culture. But modern archaeology and scholarship reveal a very different truth. Nubia was an innovator, not an imitator. Its cities, technology, and diplomacy shaped African and world history. It preserved and evolved Egyptian traditions when others allowed them to fade, a legacy reclaimed. Today, scholars and local communities in Sudan and around the world are reclaiming Nubia's story, reconstructing temples, digitizing inscriptions, teaching Meroitic symbols in African studies programs. The Black Pharaohs, Queen Generals, Iron Forgers, and Star Watchers of Nubia deserve their place in the pantheon of ancient genius. Their innovations weren't just tribal or regional, they were global contributions to human advancement. It's unjustly buried but now rising again. The Hittites, masters of iron and law before their time, the forgotten empire of the Bronze Age mention the ancient Near East, and names like Babylon or Assyria spring to mind. Yet nestled in the heart of Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, Another great civilization flourished and rivaled them in power, innovation, and influence: the Hittite Empire. Rising to prominence around 1600 BCE and lasting until roughly 1178 BCE, the Hittites were pioneers in metallurgy, jurisprudence, and military organization. Though their empire eventually fell, their legacy quietly embedded itself in the DNA of modern states and technological systems. Let's unearth the brilliance of this often overlooked civilization. Iron before the Iron Age. The Hittites were among the earliest peoples to transition from bronze to iron metallurgy, a shift that would eventually change the world. They smelted iron or using bellows-fed furnaces long before widespread adoption elsewhere. Hittite blacksmiths learned to quench, temper, and work iron into tools and weapons, offering increased durability and efficiency. The process was so advanced that when iron reached surrounding regions, it was treated as a near-mythical material often reserved for royalty. While other civilizations were still bronze-bound, the Hittites laid the foundation for the Iron Age, centuries ahead of the curve. Codified law before Rome, the Hittites were also early legal thinkers. Their law code, written circa 1650 BCE, was one of the most comprehensive of the ancient world. Unlike the harsh eye for an eye retribution seen in the Code of Hammurabi, Hittite laws often emphasized restorative justice fines, compensation, and social rehabilitation. It covered everything from property rights and family disputes to agricultural regulations and royal edicts. Their balanced, bureaucratic legal system paved the way for later legal traditions in Greece, Rome, and beyond. Architectural innovation and urban design. Hittite cities weren't just military fortresses, they were planned urban centers. Their capital, Tusa, featured stone walls, multi-gated city entries, and water storage systems. Cyclopean masonry, enormous stone blocks, fitted without mortar, gave their buildings resilience against time and earthquakes. They used vaulted arch technology, preceding Roman architectural feats. These cities reflected both pragmatism and power, reinforcing their image as an empire of order and innovation. Military might and diplomacy, the Hittite army was formidable. Known for their heavy chariots, which carried 3 warriors instead of the usual 2, giving them a tactical edge. They trained elite infantry and engineers, capable of siege warfare, wall construction, and logistics. But they weren't just warriors, they were master diplomats. The Treaty of Kadesh, circa 1259 BCE, between the Hittites and Egyptians, is the earliest known international peace treaty, signed after the Battle of Kadesh. Its tablet version is displayed at the UN headquarters in New York as a symbol of early diplomacy. The Hittites showed that empire building wasn't only about force, it required negotiation, legalism, and alliance building. Religious and linguistic syncretism, the Hittites embraced cultural diversity. Their pantheon included hundreds of deities from Hurrian, Mesopotamian, and indigenous Anatolian sources. Ritual texts show an impressive system of festivals, public ceremonies, and oaths designed to maintain cosmic and social order. They were among the first to document religious pluralism, allowing different ethnic groups to maintain their own rituals. Linguistically, they recorded in Hittite cuneiform, the oldest known Indo-European language ever discovered. This linked them to modern European languages, including English, French, and Hindi. Their archives spanning diplomacy, mythology, and Loraville, a sophisticated literate society. Science, omens, and technology. The Hittites walked the line between science and superstition. They practiced divination via the Liver-Extispicy, dreams and bird patterns, yet meticulously recorded the results, laying a foundation for empirical pattern recognition. Their medical texts included diagnostic criteria, herbal remedies, and surgical procedures. Engineers built tunnel systems, water gates, and grain storage units that sustained urban life in harsh conditions. They weren't afraid to mix practical know-how with the sacred and symbolic. Legacy that lingers, though. The Hittite Empire fell amid the late Bronze Age collapse. Its impact resonates. Ironworking knowledge spread across Europe and Asia. Legal and diplomatic precedents were absorbed by successor states. Archaeological digs at Hattusa and other sites continued to reveal their complex bureaucracy and artistic brilliance. Their script, once undecipherable, now unlocks stories of resilient governance, early science, and strategic intelligence. An empire rediscovered. For centuries, the Hittites were thought to be a biblical myth. But with the rediscovery of Hattusa in the early 20th century and the deciphering of their language, their reality came roaring back. They proved that powerful, literate, and innovative empires existed outside the traditional Greco-Roman lens. Today, the Hittites stand as a testament to how forgotten civilizations can hold the keys to understanding our world's development. They were not merely warriors or stone builders. They were technologists of their age, quietly pushing the boundaries of human capacity centuries before the modern age would rediscover their tools. The Aboriginal Australians, environmental engineers of the Dreamtime, the oldest continuous culture on Earth for over 65,000 years, long before Mesopotamia rose or Egypt carved its pyramids. The Aboriginal Australians lived in intricate harmony with one of the harshest environments on the planet. Their history wasn't written in monuments of stone, but embedded in oral traditions, songlines, and the landscape itself. Often misunderstood as primitive nomads, Aboriginal Australians were, in fact, master environmental engineers, navigators, astronomers, and custodians of a sustainable knowledge system that we are only now beginning to appreciate. Firestick farming, cultivating the continent. Modern ecologists now recognize that Australia's landscapes were not wild by default. They were shaped. Aboriginal people practiced controlled burning, known as firestick farming, to manage grasslands and forests. This encouraged new plant growth, drew in game animals, and prevented catastrophic wildfires. It created mosaic ecologies that increased biodiversity and supported food security. Their method was indigenous survival. It was a form of large-scale land management based on seasonal cycles and deep observation. Aquaculture before the Romans in Victoria, at a site known as Bujabim, archaeologists uncovered a complex aquaculture system built 6,600 plus years ago. Massive stone channels, weirs, and dams were constructed to trap and farm short-finned eels. The scale and age of this infrastructure rival anything seen in early Europe or Asia. It provided sustainable, high-protein food and even supported semi-sedentary villages. This challenges long-held ideas that Aboriginal Australians were purely hunter-gatherers and positions them as engineers with sophisticated ecological planning, astronomy, and songlines. Aboriginal Australians used the stars for far more than myth. Their celestial knowledge included planetary movements, lunar phases, and stellar navigation. The emu in the sky, formed not from stars, but the dark spaces of the Milky Way, linked to seasonal animal behavior. Songlines, or dreaming tracks, were oral maps encoded in stories and music, guiding people across vast distances. Imagine Google Maps powered by memory, myth, and music navigational tools that predated written maps by millennia. Medicine, tools, and sustainable tech, Aboriginal Australians developed tools and medical knowledge perfectly adapted to their environment. Stone axes, boomerangs, and grinding stones optimized for their needs. Medicinal plants like tea tree, eucalyptus, and witchetty grubs were used to treat wounds, infections, and malnutrition. Knowledge of seasonal cycles, water sources, and animal behavior enabled survival in climates most would find inhospitable. They passed this down not in books, but in rituals, dances, and multi-generational storytelling. The Dreamtime as a knowledge system. The dreaming isn't just myth, it's an epistemological system. It encodes laws, social responsibilities, cosmology, and environmental stewardship. Dreaming stories function like scientific theories, describing everything from geology to animal behavior. This allowed communities to live sustainably on a vast, dry continent for tens of thousands of years. Modern researchers are now exploring how Aboriginal knowledge can aid climate resilience, ecology, and sustainable resource management. Erased but enduring European colonization led to dispossession, cultural suppression, and marginalization. But Aboriginal ingenuity remains. The Bujabim aquaculture system is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Indigenous rangers are reviving traditional fire management to combat climate change. Aboriginal astronomers are collaborating with scientists to explore ancient star knowledge. The tools may have been simple, but the thought systems were advanced, rooted in deep time and ecological complexity. Final reflection? The ancient future. From stone cities to fire-controlled landscapes, aqueducts to star maps, the so-called primitive civilizations often display a depth of invention and wisdom that modern society is only now beginning to reawaken to. Their contributions, unsung, misunderstood, sometimes erased, laid the intellectual and technological foundation for much of what we think of as modern. This story reminds us, progress isn't always linear, and genius doesn't always wear a lab coat. We owe more than we realize to the minds that came before us, minds that lit the path we walk today. Disclaimer: this video has been generated entirely using artificial intelligence, AI. Some information, visuals, or representations may not be fully accurate. We apologize for any unintentional errors or misinterpretations. Please verify independently before drawing conclusions.